Clemson's got to be the favorite in the ACC, right?
You're talking ball with the ACC squad, sponsored by Game Time. From Florida State to North Carolina, from Syracuse to Miami, and from NC State to California, it's the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing you scoops, breakdowns, and the most comprehensive preview of the upcoming ACC weekend. Hang on, it could get loud, it could get heated, and it will definitely be fun. Squad up, you're part of the ACC squad.
Hello, everyone. This is the Locked On ACC squad. I'm Jackson Holzer, the host of Locked On Syracuse. We're joined by Isaac Shea, the host of Locked On Tar Heels, and we got a new face.
Yeah,
the ACC squad. That's right, Grayson Singleton, the new host of Locked On SMU. And folks, we saw the comments last season. Okay, where's the SMU representation? Well, guess what? Now we got Locked On SMU here on the podcast. And on today's show of Locked On ACC Squad, recruiting battles and wins over the past few weeks, over the past few days. We're each going to share what's gone right and what's necessarily gone wrong in our football recruiting so far. But we're going to start this podcast talking about ESPN's 2025 ACC College Football Preview, and they have the Clemson Tigers as the favorite to win the conference this upcoming season. Who's buying the first round here? Should Clemson be the favorite in the ACC?
I mean, it's funny, Jackson. We get that right as we bring in Mr. SMU Grayson Singleton here, and I think that's probably the conversation right now. These were the two schools that represented us in the CFP last year, so it makes sense, especially with just continuity there with a lot of roster stuff, that these are the teams probably at the top of the table for us. I think if Dono was here back from his Italian 8-year-long trip, Grayson, by the way, one of our Locked On ACC hosts who hosts Locked On Miami, has been gone on a 6-week trip to Italy. We're not jealous at all of him. But for just life and awesome. He is Italian, right, Jackson?
I think, and I heard the food in Italy is not very good, so I'm definitely not jealous at all. Like,
hey man,
Italian pizza,
I can't argue with that.
Italian pasta, it ain't all that. It's kind of terrible.
Anyway, if Dono was here with us, I think he'd be hemming and hawing a little bit about Miami maybe not being at the top. I was kind of laughing. There was that. Have y'all seen that Sporting News article that's resurfaced? It was actually from May, where they ranked like the ACC quarterbacks, and Carson Beck was like, I think, third on that list. Here, Miami is third on this ESPN list as well. And so I think that might be where the point of contention is. I got no problems, though, wait, am I looking at it correctly? Nope, Miami is second, not SMU. I was looking back at the 2024 table. So I got no problems with Clemson being at the top. I think Clemson, Miami, and SMU in some order probably makes the most sense to me.
Clemson, Miami, and SMU are the top three, and I think they will finish the top three. But here's the thing about this. I do think Miami in some way is being underrated a little bit. And my biggest belief in that is because I think Carson Beck still has really good college football left to play. Like, there was a reason that we thought he could be the number one quarterback off of the board in last year's draft. Obviously, that ended up being Cam Ward, who he replaces at Miami. But if you had to ask me right now, Clemson and SMU are at the top of that list because they're the two with quarterback play caller continuity coming back from last year. You look at everybody else, there's some sort of change at the top of those sorts of programs that could be competing for the top of the ACC. So if you talk about roster continuity and especially continuity with head coach, play caller, and quarterback, those are the top two right there, Clemson and SMU. And that ultimately could be what leads them to having a rematch in the ACC championship game. Not to mention, they play each other in the middle of the year.
Ooh. Jackson, what you got?
That's definitely going to be a good game. So I think Clemson is definitely the favorite. They were really good last season. They definitely turned it on down the stretch, made the college football playoff, won the ACC championship over SMU a year ago. And Cade Klubnik is due, I think, for a Heisman caliber season. I would not be surprised if he wins the Heisman Trophy this upcoming year. I like SMU right now at number 2 because I think they're a lot more predictable. I think they're just going to be really good. I don't know to the extent beyond that. Like, are they going to make a college football playoff team again? But as Grayson mentioned, they have that continuity at quarterback again. They got the same coach and everything like that. So it's all good at SMU. I look at Miami, and I think they really are this boom or bust team in 2025. Carson Beck. I actually am a big Carson Beck fan because I think it's a similar effect to what happened last year. I'm going to bring it to Syracuse for a moment with Kyle McCord, how he's coming over from Ohio State. Everyone thinks he's not very good because he's coming from Ohio State and, he's transferring to Syracuse. And you look at his numbers and he's actually really good, but he's not what Ohio State was used to. Carson Beck, projected number 1 pick, all these high expectations, right? He didn't have a bad year. He just did not live up to the expectation of a potential number 1 pick in the NFL draft. And that doesn't make it bad. It just means, okay, maybe he's not the best quarterback in the country, but he's still damn good. The problem is he's hurt. I have no idea how he's going to be off elbow surgery. The guy literally got Tommy John. So I could sit here and say, hey, Miami should be a top 2 team in the ACC this upcoming season. Miami's going to win 10 or 11 games in the regular season. They might win the ACC. They might be really damn good. They solved the defense, all that. And you could also sit here and tell me 6 months from now that Miami just had a disaster year. They were basically like Florida State because Carson Beck's elbow fell off. He doesn't have an arm. So I don't know. I mean, can you talk to me about Miami like 2 weeks into the football season and then we can have a conversation about them because they are really, really, I don't know. It's just boom or bust to me with Miami. And again, now I'm going to get all the Hurricane fans in the comment section below. He thinks they're going to be Florida State. No, I just want to see how Carson Beck's health is going to be this upcoming year. Who are your sleepers, though, in the ACC?
Go ahead, Isaac.
Definitely the Cardinal. Stanford. Give me. No, I'm just kidding. I in no way want to be any level of homeristic here, but I'm going to be. And I know you're going to, Jackson, your head drop tells me everything. This is really solely based on schedule and the hope that Bill Belichick will do what Bill Belichick does. It's funny because right now, who knows speaking of quarterback conversations, who knows who Carolina's quarterback's going to be. But hear me as I read this schedule to you. Non-con, 4 games straight to start. TCU, Charlotte, Richmond, UCF, fine, whatever. They start off ACC play hosting Clemson. Then after that, Cal, Virginia, Syracuse. On Halloween, Jackson, we're going to get spooky together for that one. Stanford, Wake, Duke, NC State. That's it. There's no Miami on that schedule. There's no SMU. There's no Louisville. There's no FSU. None of that. And so much of that for me is based on feeling like this level of coaching staff can take that schedule. And if you're not 8-4, 9-3 at the worst, or at 8-4 at worst, then I feel like you've severely missed the mark. And if you can do that, I think that is sleepery status enough. So it's not based on like, I think Carolina is going to be loaded or shock a lot of people with how good they are. It's just that schedule lines up to, if you don't have a great record, you've done something horribly wrong.
My initial thought was North Carolina too. And the reason being is because A, they did pretty well in the transfer portal with Bill Belichick on board. And number 2, Bill, you can say a lot of things about Bill right now. You can say a lot of things about Bill's personal life right now. But the one thing that is always uniform with Bill Belichick is that there's always continuity and stability in his room. So it's not as if North Carolina is going to have this variance of we're going to be really, really good and we're going to be really, really bad. That's not generally emblematic of a Bill Belichick team. The team I'm looking at, though, is Louisville. And there's a lot of confidence in Louisville and it's reflected in recruiting right now. Louisville's been in battles with guys, four guys that they generally would not have been. So a lot of people are looking at that program and saying, okay, there might be something here. The problem with Louisville, though, is that schedule, particularly on the back end, is wild. So you have to go to Miami on October the 17th, but then your final 4 games of conference play is at Virginia Tech and then home for Cal. Then you're home again, but that's Clemson. and then you travel to Dallas to take on SMU. That is a rough way to end your conference slate, and then they end the regular season against Kentucky. So Louisville, I think, is the team that on paper could be a sleeper, but if you look at that schedule, for them to be a sleeper, that is an arduous task.
So you guys both said North Carolina and also Louisville, Grayson. I'm going to go Duke.
Mensa.
I'm going, Darian Mensa. They spent a lot of money for him.
Big money
this offseason. He better be good with all the money that they paid him. But you know what? Check out Duke's schedule. Just check it out. Because it doesn't look that hard on paper. I look at Duke and I say, if Mensa is what he's being paid to be, then this Duke team could win 9-10 games relatively easily. Who are they're at Tulane? I get that's going to be fun when they go to Tulane because they have obviously Mensa. That's going to be a fun one. I'm sure he's going to be well received. NC State at Syracuse at Cal, Georgia Tech at home. Okay, they do have to go to Clemson.
Yep, that's the toughest game, and
that's the toughest game, but
by far.
I look at their schedule and I say I could easily see Duke winning 9-10 games.
Yeah, I mean it's a similar argument to what I made for Carolina easily.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it sometimes comes down to and Duke, by the way, by ESPN is projected 4.4 conference wins, which I know you can't get 0.4, but that's just how they do their models. So they're basically saying between 4 and 5.
Yeah,
I disagree. I think they're going to get 6.
I'm looking up the FanDuel over-under right now as you talk on Duke.
Because their conference schedule is NC State, at Syracuse, at Cal, Georgia Tech, at Clemson, Virginia, at North Carolina, Wake Forest. I think their ceiling is 7-1 in the conference, and at worst, they'll be 4-4.
FanDuel has them over under 6.5 total.
For the whole
low.
year.
The whole year. That's not just ACC play. That's total. That feels low to me, boys.
That feels really.
That's FanDuel bet $5. Get $150 in bonus bets. You might want to put it on Duke to go over 6.5 wins. Football, not Duke basketball. Football.
No,
I'll tell you this.
If they're giving you 6.5 Duke wins in basketball, you should take that over as well.
No. You can if you can adjust the odds, but they might be so astronomical. I don't know if it might be like you have to bet $1 billion to get $1.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this about Duke, though. If they win that game against Illinois in week 2, I think that tells us a ton about the Duke team that you're dealing with this year.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think Duke.
And that's at Wallace Wade, right? That's at home?
Yes.
Yeah. Man.
They're at home. Their only game I look at it and say that they legitimately, I give them, I guess you got to give them a 1% because I'm never going to say 0% with a power conference matchup, is you got to go to Clemson.
That's right.
That's it.
Yep.
Every other game, you at minimum have a puncher's chance to win it, and at maximum, you are going to win it.
Yeah.
So that's why I think that Duke is my sleeper in the ACC. If you tell me 6 months from now they're in the conference championship game, would not be surprised one bit. But coming up,
I know we got to go to the next thing, and maybe we can come back to this in a second. But talk about quarterback continuity. We got to have a Haynes King discussion as part of this when we come back around at some point, right?
Well, we can actually do that next here on the Locked On ACC Squad. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following along the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling with FanDuel? You can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. And folks, we were just talking about in the previous segment here, Duke football over-under on FanDuel, 6.5 regular season wins. Assuming Darian Mensa is the guy that they're paying him to be, I think it's all but a lock that Duke wins at least 6.5 games this upcoming season. You might want to take the over on that. And hey, if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up because new customers can bet just $5. And if it wins, you get $150 in bonus bets. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. This is the Locked On ACC Squad. I'm Jackson Holzer, the host of Locked On Syracuse. We're joined by Isaac Shade, host of Locked On Tar Heels, and Grayson Singleton, the new host of Locked On SMU. On the previous segment, we talked about how Clemson's the favorite in the ACC and some of the dark horses within the conference. But Isaac, I guess I'll start off with you. What is it about Haynes King that you want to talk about here?
Just like, he's a guy that has continuity. I know Georgia Tech hasn't been great since they would just ground people. Even then, calling them great is a reach, but hasn't been strong since they would ground people into the ground in the Paul Johnson era. Every now and again, throw it up to Megatron or something. But like, Haynes King, I feel like, has established himself as the type of quarterback that even on a non-great team can put the offense on his shoulder and win a couple games. That Sporting News article I referenced earlier, they had him second quarterback in the ACC behind only Klubnik. And so I think like that alone at some point has to be enough to say, like, can Georgia Tech come out and win some games? And I'm saying that not looking at their football schedule. So, like, that's obviously a factor, as it's been with all these conversations we've had, but there we go.
So in regards to Haynes, first of all, on ESPN, they are projected exactly 4 wins in the conference this upcoming season, and it's giving them I want to take a look at it right now, Georgia Tech, a 75.5% chance at winning at least 6, which is a bowl game.
FanDuel has them higher than Duke, over under 7.5.
The problem with Georgia Tech, it's not necessarily about Haynes King, but it's again about their schedule. This was their issue a year ago in that they got Clemson, albeit at home at this season, but they still got to play Clemson. And they got Georgia. They got Georgia. They got to play Georgia. I mean, that again is a home game. So, sure. And they almost beat Georgia last year, but you got to play Georgia and you got to play Clemson. Now, granted, that Georgia game does not count towards your ACC.
That's exactly right.
But you got Clemson on the schedule. How much more, if you don't win that game, how much more margin for error does a team like Georgia Tech really have?
And you got to go to Duke, to NC State, right? Like, what kind of leap does CJ Bailey take this year? I think that's a factor in this as well. Obviously, if the State boys were on here, if our other Grayson was gracing us with his presence, then I'm sure he and KG would be having some conversation about that for sure. I think
Grayson
Grayson.
Is Haynes King possibly the most disrespected quarterback in college football?
I don't think so.
I mean,
his Heisman odds are pretty
high. He's got to be in the conversation, though.
But here's the thing, and I think our conversation in the first segment may have proved that point, because Haynes King, he took very good care of the football last year. Only 2 picks, completed 73% of his passes. Against Georgia, he threw for 303 and 2 touchdowns. So he's balling against the marquee opponents, but for some reason, there's just something clunky about either him or something clunky about the way Georgia Tech goes about offense that doesn't lend to it being in any way spectacular. And I think that's why we leap over Haynes King when we talk about these discussions in the ACC, because there's nothing about what he does or Georgia Tech does that's spectacular, even though they nearly beat Georgia and outside of that game had a really good year last year.
I need to go look at FanDuel right now and try to find the Heisman odds, but I'm pretty sure when I was doing a preview a long time ago about quarterbacks that Syracuse was facing, because that's one of the podcasts I did, I think back in January.
I've got it for you.
You got it?
Yep.
What is it?
Just go down through the list.
Yeah, where is he?
Oh, specifically Haynes King?
Yeah.
All right. Manning, best odds. Nussmeier, Klubnik,
Not surprised.
Jeremiah Smith, Drew Allers, Julian Sayin, Lagway, Mateer, Sellers, Moore, Levitt, Jim Carr, Beck. Ooh, I'm going a long way, boys, and I'm not okay. There he is. Finally, he's plus 6,500.
I don't think those are disrespectful odds. But if you're telling me that I wouldn't put Carson Beck ahead of him after elbow surgery, I just can't.
That's fair.
14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
I do think. Talk about this though. A lot of the Heisman voting comes down to moments, right? You know, who has the cliche
your Heisman moment,
right? Who is more capable of generating moments? Because I feel like Carson Beck, part of his reputation has to do with he's been in so many big games and has performed in some of those big games. Whereas, again, Haynes King, they've been in one big game against Georgia last year and performed pretty well. But there's just no moments to speak. Like when you think of Haynes King, what do you really think of?
I think he's really good. Sometimes you're left with wanting a little bit more when you watch him.
Exactly.
Because you see so much talent. He's got the arm. He's a bulldozer. He runs over you, and then it just doesn't always translate. I can't necessarily explain it, but I'm not trying to disrespect the guy. I think he's really good. I think he could legitimately be an all ACC quarterback this upcoming year. But the reason why with Georgia Tech is, again, you got to play Clemson and you got to play Georgia. I don't know. Are they going to be Colorado in week 1? You got to go on the road, West Coast game. So maybe Georgia Tech's a sleeper because we're clearly sleeping on them a little bit, but I don't know.
Hang on. Let's have a time zone conversation here, Jackson Holzer. Colorado is most definitely in mountain time.
I was like, that's mountain time, homie.
Okay, but it's
Come
not.
on.
Okay, it's between.
I'm not letting you get away with such disrespect.
It's not
to
California.
prime time
Okay.
time zone.
You're traveling to the western part of the United States. I'm not a geography major, but I do know that is the western part of the United States.
Clearly, you're not a geography major.
Isn't that the weird thing about the ACC, though? Because isn't the ACC like the only conference right now where you're having teams literally go cross country for conference play? Like, look at what Cal.
No. Big Ten. You got Oregon in there.
Oh, Big Ten. Yes. No, you're right. So there's two. There's the Big Ten and the ACC. But does that not play to the disadvantage of somebody at some point in the season where you're traveling from one coast to the other?
Oh,
I have never been able to figure out why teams struggle in that. Like, I've never been able to figure it out because everyone always mentions it as a topic. Like, I got to go to a different time zone or whatever. It's huge travel. And I'm like, I don't get it. You got airplanes, you got doctors, you got everything on site to where it shouldn't be a problem for you, and yet it becomes a problem. I don't get it, but it's a talking point because
schedule makers typically try to do stuff to help you with it.
Well, yeah, they try to schedule it back to back, so you stay out wherever you're. I know in basketball that's what they did if you had to play last year. If you had to play Cal and Stanford last year, they put them on the same week, so you just stayed out in California the whole time.
And it would be like
a big deal.
Like Miami and Florida State would go together and then just flip flop the way the Pac-12 used to do travel partners. But I mean, yeah, I think it's definitely like this is basketball, but Mick Cronin, UCLA's basketball coach, talked about that a lot last year, how weary they got of all that travel back and forth. Anyway, Haynes King, 31st best Heisman odds. There you go.
I don't think it's disrespectful. I don't think it's disrespectful at all to put him at 31. How much higher should he? I think he should be above Beck, but other than that, how much higher should he really be?
That's a good question. And I think what we would have to do to ultimately answer Grayson's question is to look at other quarterbacks with either longer Heisman odds or maybe, with less fanfare about them around the country as regard to their capability or skill set and to determine it that way.
I agree. But even if you look at the top, like, you're not going to obviously, you would probably bet on Arch Manning to win the Heisman over Haynes King.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know.
But right. Like, how many? At what point do you get to the list and say, okay, that's where Haynes King might be able to be?
Let me consider Julian Sayin, for example. And I know a lot of college football at this point in time in the calendar, it's a lot to do with projection, right? But what have we seen from Julian Sayin quite yet?
I mean, it is purely a potential thing. But if you're telling me who would I rather bet on to win a Heisman, I'm taking Sayin every day. I mean, I trust that Ohio State knows what they're doing, that they know he's one of the top quarterbacks in the country. I trust Ohio State that they think this kid is good. He's probably going to be pretty good.
And the thing with Sayin too, which elevates him with those odds, is because he's going to have more opportunities for those Heisman moments too.
Yep.
Right.
100%.
So at the end of the day, I would guess that on that list, you can probably at least come up with 20 that you can say definitively you would take over Haynes King in a Heisman race in the preseason. And then outside of that, you could start debating. But again, I don't think it's disrespectful to say Haynes King, 31st in Heisman odds. I mean, think about it. 25 teams get ranked in the top 25.
Wait, is that how that works?
That's it. You know, top 25 is 25 teams. So if you're 31, that's not that far off.
That's ORV. That's ORV territory.
It's not that far off. I don't think it's disrespectful to put
it would be fun sometime to do that experiment, like going through this list and saying Haynes King or, Jaden Maliava or whatever, or Nico Maliava, things like that, right? And
I mean, that's just a coin flip.
Right, exactly. But to go through the list and actually do it that way.
Fair enough. But I think next we should maybe talk about some of our recruiting battles that we've had at each school. So let's do that on the Locked On ACC Squad. This is the Locked On ACC Squad. I'm Jackson Holzer, the host of Locked On Syracuse, joined by Isaac Shea, the host of Locked On Tar Heels, and Grayson Singleton, the new host of Locked On SMU. And hey, since you've made it already this far in the podcast, you can just do us all a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It helps all our channels grow to reach all of our fan bases. Now, we've talked a lot about ACC football preview, Haynes King, Clemson being a favorite, what's going on with Miami, who are the sleepers. We also got a lot of recruiting battles going on here in July. Syracuse just had a big one, but we'll get to that in just a moment here. If you guys can just share maybe one or two of your big recruiting battles and maybe one or two of your big recruiting wins. Let's have at it, because these schools, coincidentally, very, very interesting in recruiting.
Yeah, Grayson, you want to go ahead?
Well, SMU is seeing its biggest recruiting cycle pretty much ever. I mean, you'd probably have to go back to the 80s, but like pre-death penalty to really get a recruiting cycle that would even come close to matching this one. So right now they've got 8 4-stars committed. They're on the precipice of getting a commitment from 4-star wide receiver Zachary Turner, who's going to play tight end for them. He would be their 9th 4-star. Prior to this year, you have to go back to 2022, the last time that SMU signed a 4-star, and that was tight end RJ Maryland, who also was a wide receiver in high school. And then before that, you have to go to 2021, where they signed 1 4-star quarterback, Preston Stone. So the fact that they're on the precipice of having 9 committed is absolutely wild for SMU. And it kind of goes to show that that program is on one of the steepest ascents right now in college football. But the one you're keeping an eye on now, especially after they get a commitment from Drew Evers, the 4-star interior offensive lineman from Flower Mound, Texas, who chose them over Oklahoma and Ohio State. You're really looking at Zach Turner now, because he will pick between SMU, Oklahoma, and Miami in the coming days.
For Carolina, it's crazy. They have 30 commits in the 2026 class right now, which is easily the most in the ACC. There are no 5-stars or anything like that, but they do have 4 4-star commits, which is south, obviously, of Miami, south of Clemson, south of Florida State, south of SMU, even Syracuse. I think you guys have like 5 or 6, Jackson, if I remember correctly.
It depends, but yeah. Go on.
I mean, it's very Belichickian, right? To cast a wide net, see who's man enough to stick it out, survival of the fittest and all that. The highest ranked recruit Carolina actually just got, about a week ago now at this point, maybe a little bit less than, and that's Red Chapman, who committed last Thursday to Carolina. He's the highest rated player for them in this class that went up against Florida State in that battle. He's a 6'4", 195-pound kid, good hands, great route tree. Kind of stuff comes out of Alabama. Interestingly, his brother had committed to Carolina about a week before, and another D-back out of their same school in Alabama had also committed to Carolina. So that's the biggest. And then I would also say Travis Burgess, a high-level quarterback, 4-star that committed to Carolina over like basically Auburn just to shove it in Zach Blackerby's eyeballs. And so we'll take that. He's had some really nice stuff at Elite 11 recently. And so that's probably the 2 biggest notable wins in recent time.
Well, for Syracuse, they are on pace to have their best recruiting class since 2003 at minimum. If you go back and look at class rankings They really started on 24/7 Sports in 2003, and Syracuse has never even had a top 30 class.
Wow.
After getting 5-star Calvin Russell, which is their first 5-star since 2001. You got to go back to Johnny Morant. Fran Brown's definitely doing wonders. They are now bordering a top 20 class in the nation. Again, unheard of for Syracuse football over the past 2+ decades. The guy to keep an eye on now who can maybe solidify their class as being top 20 is current 4-star commit defensive back Tadarius Hughes at Florida State. The interesting thing about Tadarius Hughes is that, yes, he's committed to Florida State, but he did take an official visit to Syracuse at the end of June. And as Brian Smith likes to say on the Locked On Portal podcast, if you get someone on campus for an official visit, you got a shot to actually land the kid. There's definitely mutual interest there. So they got him on campus for an official visit. On top of that, he was at Calvin Russell's commitment party when he decided to commit to Syracuse, and they are also teammates at Miami Northwestern High School. Take that information for what you will. But if I'm a Florida State fan, I'm looking at Tadarius Hughes right now and I'm saying, are we sure we're going to be able to hang on to him? And if you're Syracuse, I think you got to do everything in your power. They might already be doing this, but do everything in your power to try to flip him. Because if Syracuse flips him, they are going to have a top 20 recruiting class in the nation when all is said and done. So this is a program, in my opinion. I get I'm a Syracuse host. I'm a Syracuse fan, but they are definitely on the rise in the ACC. Any last folks? Or excuse me. Any last thoughts? Folks?
We are the last folks here. That is an accurate statement.
This is the Last Supper, as you say.
No, I mean, I think the thoughts are it's July. We're literally weeks away from camp, and I don't know about you boys. I am salivating. Let's get this going.
I think there's just so many fascinating things about this season. Grayson, you can go.
I mean, you look at North Carolina, SMU, and Syracuse, all looking like they're going to have potentially a top 20 recruiting class. Who would have thought? The boys, the NIL era is here, and it has turned everything on its head.
And I think the funny part is that after Calvin Russell committed, there was a lot of people on certain fan bases that were saying, it's the money. It's the money. It's the Syracuse money. And I'm like, where did this money come from? Have you looked at Syracuse recruiting in recent years? You know, forget the football for a moment, like basketball, they can't get anyone in basketball up until maybe this year with Nate George, but I don't know. Maybe they just found new money. I don't know. I'll take it. I'll tell you, there's no salary cap with NIL. But, folks, this has been the Locked On ACC Squad. I'm Jackson Holzer, the host of Locked On Syracuse. Isaac Shade, host of Locked On Tar Heels. Grayson Singleton, new host of Locked On SMU. And since you made it this far in the podcast, hey, when you're done, you can check us out on all our channels, Locked On Syracuse, Locked On Tar Heels, and Locked On SMU. And we'll be back next week with another episode of Locked On ACC Squad.